Signs an INFJ is going through emotional abuse. INFJs, known for their empathetic hearts and intuitive minds, often find themselves deeply affected by the emotions and energies of those around them. But when an INFJ is going through emotional abuse, their unique personality traits can make it difficult for them to recognize or articulate what's happening. If you're an INFJ or know someone who is, understanding the signs of emotional abuse specific to this rare and sensitive personality type can be crucial in recognizing the trauma and taking steps toward healing. 1. They become even more private than usual. INFJs are naturally private individuals. They only open up to a select few people they trust. However, when they are going through emotional abuse, this privacy can intensify to the point where they start isolating themselves even from those they are closest to. Instead of seeking help or sharing their emotional pain, an INFJ might retreat into their inner world, convinced that no one will truly understand or that speaking out will make things worse. If an INFJ suddenly withdraws from loved ones and becomes unusually silent, it could be a red flag that they're dealing with emotional abuse. 2. They start to second-guess their intuition. One of the INFJ's greatest strengths is their intuition. They have an almost uncanny ability to read people and situations, often sensing when something is off before others do. However, emotional abuse can chip away at this natural confidence. An emotionally abusive partner or person may gaslight the INFJ, making them doubt their perceptions and feelings. Over time, the INFJ may begin to question their inner voice, second-guessing themselves and feeling confused about what's real and what's being manipulated. When an INFJ loses faith in their intuition, it's a sure sign something is deeply wrong. 3. Their perfectionism and self-criticism intensifies. ENFJs are known for their perfectionistic tendencies and can be their own harshest critics. In the face of emotional abuse, these traits often worsen. The abuser might exploit the INFJ's deep desire to be good enough, making them feel like nothing they do is right. As a result, the INFJ may constantly strive to meet impossible standards, blame themselves for the abuse, and become trapped in a cycle of self-doubt. If you notice an INFJ friend or loved one constantly criticizing themselves or expressing feelings of worthlessness, emotional abuse may be at the root. 4. They overextend their empathy. INFJs are famously empathetic. They deeply care about others' emotions and often take on the pain of those around them. In abusive situations, this empathy can become a double-edged sword. The INFJ may overextend themselves, constantly trying to fix the abuser or heal their emotional wounds, even when it's harmful to their own well-being. Emotional abusers often play on this empathy, manipulating the INFJ into believing that their love, understanding, and sacrifice can change the abuser's behavior. If an INFJ is constantly defending or making excuses for their abuser, or if they seem emotionally exhausted from trying to keep the peace, it's a strong sign they are trapped in an abusive cycle. 5. They stop expressing their feelings. INFJs are deeply emotional beings, but they often struggle with verbalizing their feelings, especially when they are under stress. In emotionally abusive situations, this difficulty can escalate into complete emotional suppression. They may fear that expressing their true emotions will lead to more conflict or abuse. An INFJ going through emotional abuse might seem unusually detached, emotionally numb, or like they're suppressing their true thoughts and feelings to avoid confrontation. This emotional shutdown is often a defense mechanism against the constant invalidation they experience in an abusive relationship. 6. They blame themselves for the abuser's behavior. INFJs, with their tendency towards self-reflection and introspection, often internalize the behavior of others. In abusive situations, this means they may start to believe they are the cause of the emotional abuse. The abuser might feed into this by saying things like, "You made me do this," or, "If you weren't so sensitive, I wouldn't have to treat you this way." The INFJ, already prone to overthinking and self-doubt, can become convinced that they are at fault. If you notice an INFJ constantly blaming themselves for things beyond their control or excusing their abuser's actions, they may be deep in the cycle of emotional abuse. 7. They experience chronic anxiety or depression. While INFJs are naturally introspective and may struggle with emotional highs and lows, emotional abuse can push them into chronic states of anxiety or depression. They may feel constantly on edge, waiting for the next wave of criticism or manipulation from their abuser. Over time, this stress can lead to feelings of hopelessness, worthlessness, and deep depression. Signs like trouble sleeping, loss of appetite, lack of interest in previously enjoyed activities, and persistent sadness are indicators that the INFJ's mental health is suffering under the weight of emotional abuse. 8. They feel trapped but fear being alone. INFJs are known for their intense loyalty, and this trait often keeps them in emotionally abusive relationships longer than they should be. They may feel deeply attached to the abuser and believe that they're the only one who can save the relationship. Despite recognizing the pain and toxicity of the situation, the INFJ might fear being alone more than enduring the abuse. The idea of abandoning someone, even an abuser, can be paralyzing for an INFJ. Odd day. If an INFJ you know talks about feeling trapped or expresses fear of leaving a toxic situation, it's a clear sign they're struggling with emotional abuse. 9. They become hypervigilant. In response to emotional abuse, an INFJ might develop a heightened sense of alertness, constantly trying to predict and prevent the next emotional blow. This hypervigilance is emotionally exhausting and often leaves the INFJ feeling like they're walking on eggshells. They may become more cautious with their words, actions, and even body language, fearing that anything they do will set off the abuser. If you notice an INFJ acting overly cautious or anxious around a particular person, they may be trying to avoid further abuse. 10. They lose their sense of identity. Perhaps one of the most telling signs of emotional abuse for an INFJ is a loss of self. INFJs are deeply connected to their values and sense of purpose, but emotional abuse can erode this connection. Over time, the INFJ may lose sight of who they are, becoming a shadow of their former self. They might start making decisions based on what the abuser wants or expects, rather than following their own values and desires. If an INFJ seems lost, disconnected from their passions, or unsure of their own worth, it's a strong indication that emotional abuse has taken a toll. Emotional abuse can be particularly damaging for an INFJ due to their sensitivity, empathy, and introspective nature. They may not always recognize the signs, and their loyalty and desire to help others can keep them trapped in unhealthy situations for far too long. If you're an INFJ or you care about one, it's important to be aware of these signs and to reach out for help when needed. Healing from emotional abuse takes time, but INFJs have the strength, resilience, and intuition to rise above it. With the right support and self-awareness, INFJs can reclaim their power and return to living a life that aligns with their true values.